Tuesday, September 3rd, 2019. For those that have not had the pleasure, a couple of housekeeping items before we begin. First of all, after we call the roll, we then do approval of the minutes. And I'll take a step back. If you could silence your cell phones, we'd greatly appreciate that.
Once I have a seat.
For that reason. And after we call the roll and approve the minutes, the way things work is city staff will present on an item. First, it's open to the commission just for technical questions. Once we close the technical questions, we open it up for the public for comment and questions and anything you'd like to say. So if you do have something to say on the topic, we ask that you try to stay on the topic and also step up to the microphone and the lectern over here and state your name and address so we have it for the minutes. Once everybody who has desired a chance to speak has done so, we close public comment, bring it back to the commission for a discussion and a vote. With that, Mina, let us call the roll.
Kathleen Propp.
Here.
Lindsay Erickson.
Here.
Michael Ford.
Here.
John Hintz.
Here.
John Kiefer. Lori Palmieri. Thomas Perry.
Here.
Justin Mitchell.
Here.
Derek Groth.
Here.
Thomas Voitek.
Here. Moving on to the approval of the minutes from the meeting from August 20th. Do we have any additions, corrections, deletions, et cetera?
Motion to approve.
Second.
All those in favor say aye, please.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion clearly passes. Moving on to item number 1, access control variance for 4 driveway entrances at 895 West 20th Street. Any site inspections here? Okay, we got 1 or 2. And then we do accept the staff report as part of the record. So on to you.
Thank you. All right, so this is an access control variance request to increase the number of access drives in a local street from 2 to 4. So the subject site is located at the southeast corner of West 20th Avenue and Knapp Street. It's part of the Winnebago County Airport parcel, and the site includes the building and associated parking area used by C.R. Meyer. The surrounding area, we have a mixture of commercial and residential uses to the north, the post office to the west, and airport land to the south and to the east. So here's an aerial view of the subject site. It currently has 4 accesses off of Knapp Street. So the applicant has submitted plans to reconstruct the parking lot on the same footprint as it currently exists. And again, it currently has 4 accesses from Knapp Street, and the applicant is proposing to retain all 4 accesses. So an access control variance is required, as the maximum for driveway approaches on a local street is 2 per property. Here is the site plan. So according to the applicant, all 4 accesses from Knapp are needed. So the north parking lot has an access, and according to the applicant, that is needed as that functions as the primary exit from the north parking area, and it provides access to 20th Ave to the north. The second and third driveways to the south are needed for deliveries to the overhead door from the second access, as well as access to the dumpster enclosure. And it says that the dumpster, or the trash and recycling pickup, enters through the second entrance to the south and exits through the third. And they also note that the 4th driveway to the south, the last one to the south, is needed for access to that southernmost parking area. So planning reviewed this, and we initially did not see any concerns, as it's just a replacement of what is existing. Public Works did review it, and they noted that they support the variance provided the parking lot configuration and use warrant the need for all existing access points to remain per the site's current operation practices. However, after our staff report was sent out, we did receive notification from them that they would like to see one of the driveways along Knapp removed. So staff is recommending approval of the access control variance to increase the number of permitted access drives from a local street from 2 to 3 rather than 4 as proposed.
All right, thank you. Technical questions. Has the petitioner been told that?
We just found that out today, so we were hoping Mr. Garrick from Public Works would be here as well, but the petitioner is here.
Oh, so we'll hear about that later. All right, technical questions? All right, anyone here from the public to speak to this item today?
Yeah, I'm Kevin Force.
Come on up, sir. Tell us your name and address, and then tell us your thoughts.
Kevin Force, 895 West 20th. So I'm part of this building. The 4 existing driveways, if you've ever seen the post office traffic over in that area, they come in there with the big semis. We could actually come in there and have 2 of our driveways blocked by semis when they're waiting to get into their access. Obviously, we can't live without the north one. It's our only safe access really to get out on 20th. Otherwise, the north parking lot is trying to all get out across 20th or intersecting 20th, which at times when Oshkosh truck traffic is coming down the road, it can end up being a nightmare in there. Driveway number 2 is, we take deliveries in there occasionally by semi or larger panel vans. That gives them direct backing access into that drive. If we would give up that one, we'd have no access to our overhead door. Driveway 2 and 3 also work with our dumpster situation. Driveway 2 is used to snag the dumpster that sits in the enclosure to the right, and then he circles out without having to back out onto Knapp. Driveway number 3 allows him to come in, pick the dumpster that sits on the left-hand side of our dumpster enclosure, and then drive out driveway number 2 in order to avoid, again, backing out into Knapp. And again, if we have semis sitting in there that are servicing the post office, either one of those two have a potential of being shut off. And then obviously driveway number 4 gives us access to our southernmost portion of our parking lot. So again, we've been existing that way. We would like to continue that way.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Oh, hold on. There's a question for you, sir. John?
And here this says going down to 3, and
Correct.
you said you wanted to stay at 4.
Correct.
I'm confused.
I just found out about the 3
Yeah.
right now.
So after we had written the initial staff report, we had received further comment from the Public Works. They had a comment in the review system. And it sounds like the comment simply said they'd like to see, and here's Mr. Garrick from Public Works, that they would like to see 3 instead of 4. We didn't have a lot of additional information. We were actually hoping Justin could speak to a little bit further today if there was a specific driveway they would like to see removed. Just get some information on them on why they feel 3 is more appropriate than 4.
I think we'd all like to hear that.
Yes.
Sorry.
So just in general, I think knowing the site constraints, we had some pre-meetings with them. It was gonna be nice to see if they'd be able to get it down to 3. Wanted them to at least look at it and go through the process of trying to be able to see what their layouts would be able to handle it. There isn't necessarily one specifically that we'd like to be removed. See the one on 20th being valuable as far as exiting the site. Driveway 1, 2, 3, or 4, probably 2 or 3 off of Keller would be preferred. But again, wanted them to be able to do some diligence, to look at their site, to see if it would be even possible.
Go ahead, Mayor Palmieri.
How many 5 accesses?
So the variance is specific to Knapp Street, where they have 4. Code would typically allow a single one on that.
But a total of 5 for the site.
Right now, they total of 5, correct?
So, Justin, would there be some benefit, I hate to delay things, would there be some benefit to giving you an opportunity to chat with the petitioner outside of this meeting? Make a recommendation of which driveway could be eliminated?
Potentially, and
Seeing as
again,
that we just found out about this now.
yeah, again, I think we see, and again, we had some pre-meetings with them about their, site and what they're doing. So I understand their constraints with eliminating one of the driveways. Any one of them obviously are beneficial to the site, but wanted them to at least do some due diligence to see if it's a viable option. So I would be open to discussing that, but I don't know the timing of what needs to get done.
Any other questions for Justin as long as he's... All right, anyone else in the public here to speak to this item?
I was just wondering if we could get the gentleman back up related to the question on timing. Just when was this?
Well, we were trying to get the rebuild or the construction done yet this year. But if we can't, we can't. So that's kind of what our timing was trying to, that's what the push was right now.
2 weeks would still make that feasible?
It's possible, as cold weather comes on, the asphalt plant shut down at the end of November. We don't have anybody online yet, so I'm not so sure we'd be able to get on anybody's schedule if we wait another 2 weeks. We haven't made a commitment to anybody. There are still openings out there. Obviously, we're trying to just get on somebody's schedule before it gets too late in the season.
Thank you. All right. No one else is there to speak to the item, then back to the commission. We need to move to adopt the findings.
Motion to adopt the findings and recommendation as stated in the staff report.
I'll second. That's been moved and seconded. Now on to discussion. Go ahead, John. And then Ken.
This street is not used very much. I know I live in this area. And the four driveways, I thought we got very good reasoning for having them, especially with the refuse removal just to the north of driveway 2, where they can come in driveway 2 on one side to get the far one on the right-hand side, but then they have to come in the other one to get the one that's on the left. But then they can go out driveway 2, and the fact that the trucks do back up going into the post office right there, the semis with trailers, and need to get in. I would like us to see, or I would like to see us not restrain them to 3. And I would propose an amendment to allow the 4 as it is. If I would have a second on that, we'll see.
Kath?
I agree with John. I think it's a stub street, and I think we should allow them to have their 4 driveways.
Is that a second to his motion?
Friendly amendment?
Are you making the
I would-
amendment?
I would, well, I'll ask you if you'd accept a friendly amendment to go from 3 to 4.
Yeah, absolutely. This was a standard motion
Uh,
here. I thought you were amending it.
Well, no, she had the motion, that's.
Okay, go ahead.
Quick question, are there sidewalks on Knapp?
No, there are not.
All right, so there would be no pedestrian traffic there.
You have the fire department,
No safety.
Yarmire, and the post office.
Mayor Palmieri?
I guess following up on that, are there sidewalks planned?
Friends from Public Works are coming up.
Being as we just reconstructed that stretch of Knapp Street, no, we have no current plans to expand sidewalk beyond what already exists at the northwest corner to get from the intersection of Knapp and 20th to the post office.
Thank you. Okay, we have a motion on the floor with a second to allow them a 4th, going back to the original.
Yes.
Any further discussion on that? Then let's call the roll.
Hintz,
Aye.
Kiefer,
Aye.
Palmieri,
Aye.
Perry,
Aye.
Mitchell,
Aye.
Crab, Erickson, Ford,
Aye.
Wojtek.
Aye.
Motion carried 9-0 with amended condition, or, sorry, amended motion.
No need to apologize. On to item number 2, a 2-lot land division and certified survey map located at 1732 Knapp Street. Any site inspections for this one? Okay, we've got a couple. We do accept the staff report as part of the record. On to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In September of 2018, the Common Council approved the acquisition of several properties in the vicinity of the former city-operated Keenest landfill, which operated in the 1960s, after which it was initially used as a quarry. The city's in the process of conducting a methane gas remediation efforts emanating underground from the former landfill site. The city has or since is in the process of purchasing these properties, which are 4 of which the city has acquired or outlined in the pink color here, and the 5th property being the rear 215 or so feet of a property which fronts on Knapp Street. Starting in 2015, the city's consultant AECOM has done a site analysis to determine the extent of methane gas emanating from the site and determine that these 5 properties are required for the city to move forward with its mitigation efforts. The subject property is a 2.25 acre property, which is developed with a single-family home, very close to Knapp Street there, and is also built out with associated accessory structures. The site is unusually large for a single-family development, being 2.2 acres in size, approximately 636 feet deep by 180 feet wide at its widest point. The surrounding area is generally single-family in nature, with the exception of school to the west and another former landfill site to the north, which is Quarry Park. Quarry Park also has seen methane gas remediation efforts by the city. Proposed lot 1 on the map down here is an L-shaped lot containing the existing single-family residence and accessory structures. The lot's approximately 419 feet deep and 180 feet wide at its widest, and has about 75 feet of right-of-way frontage, and is 1.36 acres in size. The lot exceeds the minimum base standards of the zone district, the SR5 district, in regard to width, depth, and area. One little thing missing on the submitted map, I'll go to the certified survey map. The surveyor failed to show a small little right-of-way dedication over here, which was platted in the early 1960s to place sidewalk around some existing trees. You can see that little notch out right there. So that will be communicated to the surveyor to correct that error. Proposed lot 2 is rectangular shaped, and this being the subject site or the subject area the city is looking to acquire for its methane gas remediation efforts. The lot is 215 feet deep, 180 feet wide, and just shy of an acre in size, and again meets all the minimum SR5 base standards. One item of concern is this is considered a landlocked parcel, which means it does not have direct right-of-way frontage. The subdivision regulations require a 30-foot right-of-way access, and this fails to meet it. So they have two options to fix that, either by acquiring a variance from the subdivision regulations to create the landlocked parcel, or option 2 is the lot can be shown as an outlot on the final map. Per state statute, outlots are lots not intended to be developed as a building site and are generally intended to remain vacant or undeveloped, usually due to environmental or dimensional constraints on the property. So the city does not have any plans to construct any other or any type of structures other than methane remediation facilities. So staff is recommending changing lot 2 to outlot 1 on final map. And this next slide, this is a aerial photo from 1937 showing the quarry operations or being used as a quarry at that time. And you can see the 4 lots that the city has already acquired over here, and then the back portion of the subject site, which the city is in the process of acquiring, and it covers pretty much the entire the quarry operations. The Department of Public Works reviewed the CSM and did not have any other issues other than the shared concern with the lot 2 being landlocked. So with that, staff is recommending approval of the 2-lot land division with the one condition, changing lot 2 to outlot 1 on final CSM.
Thank you, sir. Technical questions? Kathy and then the mayor.
What is a methane gas remediation facility going to look like?
Public Works Director James Robbie is coming up.
It will look very similar to the installation on the west side of Knapp Street at the former Knapp Street quarry. So across the street from Quarry Park, there is a system as well. Jeff, I don't know if you have any of the air photos that could show
I can
that.
zoom in on this one here.
I saw something with a fence.
Yeah, that's
Is
yeah,
that it?
Yep, it's what it is. It's an underground perforated piping system that goes to a enclosed into a fenced-in area where there is pumps that apply a vacuum to that perforated system to draw the methane out of the ground and then vent it.
So it would be look like kind of an informal fence on Knapp Street, the one on Knapp Street. Would the facility look the same?
It would look very much the same. I don't recall the exact design off the top of my head, but it would look very similar to that. Locationally, we are currently planning it to be installed somewhere near the vicinity of the current house location at 885. So it will be set back from the 17th Ave quite some distance. That's the garage is there. The house is a little, yep, that's where the house. So it's somewhere in that general location is where it will be installed.
More questions?
Yeah, go ahead.
Will this take care of the possible dangers to the neighborhood now, or is there a possibility of other properties being?
No, Jeff, if you could bring up the air photo from 37 again, please. The outline, the northern quarry was the former Keenest quarry. The southern quarry is the former Paulus quarry. Both of those were filled. We know the former Keenest was filled with municipal solid waste that generates methane as it decomposes, and some of that methane has worked its way into the former Paulus quarry, which is why we're also looking to acquire that land and get the methane extraction system around there. The intent of the system is that it goes around the perimeter of the landfill so that, there are not materials outside of the trench system that would be generating methane. Everything is generated from inside that system, and the site is completely encircled. Because Paulus is not generating, our initial plan will be to construct 3 sides of that one and continue to monitor the monitoring wells on the southern end to make sure that we are seeing those reductions, and if not, we'll close the loop.
Thank you.
Mayor?
Just a technical question about the comedy. So we already have lot 1, right?
No, lot 1 is still privately owned, this one here.
Yes.
And yeah, there's no plans for the city to acquire that piece.
Okay, all right. I guess go back to that. Then could lot 2 just be combined with the northern one and it just inherits that? Or do we have to?
At the time of creating the lot, you have to have to be able to create that lot legally, it must meet one of those 2 requirements first, of either being an outlot or it being a subdivision variance. The CSM could not continue without that portion of it first.
Okay, so we would in effect be combining it and calling it an outlot?
Correct.
Okay.
The simplest way to do it is just simply call it an outlot and it solves the problem.
Gotcha. Okay.
Then afterwards, the city could combine all 5 lots into one.
Once we have ownership of all of them, we need this CSM to be approved so we can buy the subject lot 2 or outlot 1 as you're discussing. And then once we have ownership, then we could look at combining the entire thing.
Merging them into a single city-owned
separate
parcel.
CSM, but we got to get them under our ownership first.
Other technical questions?
Are there other properties that you're looking to acquire, or is this the last?
No, just those 5 that are highlighted in magenta. And as of last week, all 5 of those have been closed. We're still working on relocation of 2 of the property owners. And then this lot 2 or lot 1 of this CSM will be the last piece.
And then last question, what is the time, like the lifespan of a mitigation system?
The mitigation system, with its construction, it's perforated polyethylene piping and a gravel trench system, so it has, a very long lifetime. We will continue to monitor the site just as we have been with Knapp Street and Quarry Park to see if we can eventually switch from an active system, which has pumps that apply suction to suck it out, to go back to a more passive system. To date, we have not been able to do that with either Quarry Park or Knapp Street, so we will continue to operate that active system.
So so I have like some sort of timeline. Is there any, at some point ever, that this converts back into park space or developable land or anything? Or is
It will
this
never
just-
convert to developable land. Because of it being an old landfill, it will never be developable. But it can't, just as Quarry Park is open park space now, even with the system installed, that is a possibility, but it can never be developed.
Thanks.
Other technical questions? All right, thank you, James. Anyone here from the public to speak to this item today? Seeing none, back to the commission. We need a motion.
Motion to adopt the findings and recommendation as stated in the staff report.
Second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. Discussion? Hands are not raising, so let's call the roll.
Hintz,
Aye.
Kiefer,
Aye.
Palmieri,
Aye.
Perry,
Aye.
Mitchell,
Aye.
Prop,
Aye.
Erickson, Ford,
Aye.
Wojtek.
Aye.
Motion carried 9-0.
Thank you very much. I'm told we have news on item number 3. It's a public hearing conditional use permit request to establish an outdoor storage use at 3135 Oregon Street.
So after staff had submitted the staff report to Plan Commission and the applicant is requesting that we hold this off for 2 weeks. In your staff report, you'll note there are a number of conditions, things that they would like, that we need updated changes we need made. Applicant would like to address those before bringing it back for hearing as opposed to having them conditioned. They'd like to work with staff, get it all figured out, bring it back in 2 weeks. As we had already published for a public hearing, we still need to bring it forward today. And like I said, on the applicant's behalf, they are asking for the Plan Commission to hold this over for 2 weeks so they can address the concerns and bring it back to you.
Do we need to do anything?
So we would need a motion from
All right.
Plan Commission if they are willing to do that.
Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
What are we voting for?
Is that good enough?
That'll work.
You had mentioned, sorry,
That's okay.
just that as it is a public hearing, that if anyone was here to
Correct.
speak.
If anyone is here and would like to
I'm
speak
sorry.
there, we can definitely take public comment. We will obviously have a more thorough presentation and analysis to be able to provide in 2 weeks once we see the additional changes that the applicant is willing to make. But if we do have anyone here today, more than happy to take comment from them.
Look like it.
Anyone?
Okay, back to
Can
the
I
commission.
just
Lori?
ask a question since it's being delayed? Were there any concerns by staff at all about any kind of noise?
Stephen, I don't think
surrounding
we
area.
had anything in for concerns with noise on this situation.
I think ours was mainly landscaping and lighting.
Yeah, there was a lot of landscaping and lighting concerns that staff had. They just simply hadn't met those standards, so we wanted to work through it with them.
Okay, all right, that's excellent.
Anything else? All right, we're good to go then. We'll next thing. Moving on to item number 4, a specific implementation plan approval for a senior living community located at 2080 Witzel Avenue. Do we have any site inspections for that one? Okay, we do accept the staff report as part of the record. On to you, Brian.
Thank you. So this is an SIP request for a senior living community. The site is zoned SMU PD and consists of one parcel about 14.5 acres in size, located on the north side of Witzel Avenue. The surrounding uses are commercial uses to the east, and then some residential uses to the west. And here's an aerial view of the subject site. So on April 9th of this year, Common Council approved a general development plan for a senior living community, and that applicant is now requesting SIP approval for Phase 1 of the development of the site. And Phase 1 is shown here in the darker building area. So Phase 1 is a prominent initial development of the site. It includes the main entrance area, 30 memory care units, 43 assisted living units, 50 senior apartments, kitchen, dining, activity, and management areas. So Phase 1 includes a total of about 26.2% impervious surface area for the site. It will be served by a single access point from Witzel Avenue and will include 50 underground and 81 surface parking stalls. So here's the site plan, so here's the access. Here's the building area and the parking for the site, as well as the access to underground parking. So the 131 stalls being proposed meet the minimum requirement of one space per employee in the largest shift for memory care and assisted living, and 2 spaces per unit for independent care, and that was laid out in the GDP. So the building and pavement areas meet setback requirements with the exception of a truck turnaround, which extends into the 10-foot pavement setback to about 6 feet from the east property line. The Oshkosh Fire Department did request that the turnaround remained in place to allow for circulation of fire department vehicles. So staff is recommending a base standard modification to allow for the turnaround to extend into that 10-foot pavement setback. There's a pedestrian access being provided from the parking lot to Witzel Avenue. The required 4 bicycle stalls have not been provided, but that can be addressed as part of a site plan review process. Revised stormwater management plans were submitted as part of the SIP process, and Public Works informed the applicant that drainage to the wetland is allowed. However, a drainage path to the right-of-way or waters of the state is required, and the final stormwater management plans will be approved during the site plan review process. Here's the landscape plan, which does appear to meet minimum point requirements for building foundation, paved areas, and yards. However, some of the deciduous and shade trees will need to be moved to the parking row ends to meet interior parking lot landscaping requirements. The GDP noted that the buffer yard along the west property line needed to be altered to meet code requirements for type and location of buffer yard trees, and it also included a condition that the properties at 2092 and 2088 Witzel must be screened with 0.4 opacity buffer yard. So that's along this property line here. And so there's a combination of 6-foot tall wood fencing being proposed with a combination of buffer yard trees. And along the west property line, they're proposing Mount Batten juniper trees for that buffer yard, and that's considered a low evergreen, and code requires tall or medium evergreen trees for screening. So staff is recommending that the Mount Batten junipers be replaced with a tall or medium evergreen tree along that west property line for that buffer yard. Along the south buffer yard, there are eastern red cedar and Serbian spruce trees being proposed, and they do appear to meet the point requirements for that buffer yard. Along with this, a minimum of 50% of the required points must be located on the exterior side of that 6-foot tall solid fencing, and that can be addressed during a site plan review. There was a sign plan submitted which included a 8-foot or a 5-foot 8-inch tall brick monument sign shown right here, and that actually appears to be located within the front setback area. So that will need to meet the front setback area, or front setback of 25 feet. But it does appear to meet size requirements for monument signs, and that can be addressed under a separate building permit. A lighting plan was submitted, and it did appear to meet photometric plan requirements and lighting fixture height requirements, so there's no concerns there. Here are the building elevations. So the final building elevations do appear to meet city standards. There actually are no standards for institutional uses, but we did review them in comparison to multifamily design standards, and they do appear to meet those standards and are clad primarily in a mixture of stone, brick, and fiber cement siding. And also there is sufficient articulation and window area for the facades. A view of these facades. There's a refuse enclosure being proposed to the east side of the building. That will be 6 foot tall with a brick veneer to match the principal building materials and a solid cedar gate for access. So staff does not have any concerns with the refuse enclosure. And staff recommends approval of the SIP as proposed with the findings listed in your staff report and the conditions of a base standard modification to allow a 6-foot setback from the east property line for truck turnaround, where code requires a 10-foot pavement setback, and the final landscape plan shall be approved by the Department of Community Development.
Thank you, sir. Technical questions? Mayor?
Page 8, where the breakdown is on the parking. So it looks like, you know, we're requiring 102, but they're providing 131.
So we actually, this was their kind of outline of what they say they need. Staff, so that's their kind of thought on what they require. Staff actually reviewed it against the code requirements as outlined in the GDP, and they have enough. How they get to their number is a little different than the zoning code, but ultimately they match up at the 131 being sufficient for the code requirement. So kind of their breakdown of how they think they use those 131 is a little different than what our zoning code outlines.
Okay.
But they both match up to being code compliant.
Okay, so there's a range there, is what you're saying?
Correct.
Okay, because it looks like they're, you know, trying to be pretty judicious and then added more on, so yeah, I guess.
Yep.
All right, that's all.
Other technical questions? Go ahead, Justin.
The wetland space that's on the layout that they have.
Kind of the center of it.
Is that the same footprint, so they're not changing any of that? They're not,
I don't believe they're intending to do a whole lot with the wetland. I know we can ask the applicant.
specifically, none of the developed areas are currently wetland, so the wetland that's there on that map
They're
is
kind of
what's there
staying
now.
to the outside of it.
Just one more question then. Was there concern with the close proximity of the sole driveway for all of this traffic with how close it is to?
No, we reviewed it with the fire department and everything. They felt it was sufficient. They did want that turnaround for it. That was their only request. Early on in this process, and it was before you were on Plan Commission, staff actually held a neighborhood meeting with the residents to the west as well to discuss it. And being a senior living community, it does not generate the same number of traffic and trips as if it was a true multifamily development.
Got it, thank you.
Other technical questions? All right, seeing none, anyone here for the public to speak to this item? Someone's already here. Can you state your name and address, sir?
Yeah, Mark Hammond, Vice President Development for MSP Real Estate. So just to confirm, yeah, we are not modifying or adjusting the boundaries of that kind of primary wetland area in the center of the site.
Sure, thanks.
Anything else to share? Any questions for the gentleman, as long as he's here? All right, thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
Anyone else here to speak to this item today? Seeing none, we close public comment, bring it back to the commission for a motion.
Motion to adopt the findings and recommendations as stated in staff report.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Do we have any further discussion? This land has been long empty, so this will be nice.
Yeah, should be a great development addition to that area. You know, staff initially had, you know, some thoughts about reducing some of those setbacks to the east, but ultimately it backs up to the back of the Fleet Farm parcel. Seems like an appropriate place to grant a base standard modification, improve life safety with fire department turnaround.
All right. Good enough. Let's call the roll, Mina.
Vince,
Aye.
Kiefer,
Aye.
Palmieri,
Aye.
Terry,
Aye.
Mitchell,
Aye.
Crop,
Aye.
Erickson,
Aye.
Ford,
Aye.
Wojtek.
Aye.
Motion carried 9-0.
On to the final item of business tonight, and that is a public hearing for proposed creation of a tax increment financing district number 38, Pioneer redevelopment designation of boundaries and approval of project plan. All right, just hold on a second. I gotta make sure I do this right.
Is Ms. Nyforth joining us up here as well?
Come
Come on, Kelly.
Was there some site inspections for this one? All right, we got a couple, 3. We accept the staff report as part of the record. On to y'all.
All right, so a little bit different of a tax increment district than we traditionally see. So we're gonna go through a little bit of the staff report, a little bit of the project plan, kind of talk through kind of the city's philosophy we're using in this case. I will start out by kind of mentioning the city has generally taken the approach that Plan Commission's role in a TID development is to look at compatible land uses and is it compatible with the plans the city has in place for those general areas. And generally we look at the financial side of it and leave that up to our council to make that decision. However, the information is in here, so if you have questions about it, you can ask it. Generally, the city, though, has taken that approach. Plan Commission does the land use side of it, and we leave the council to make those financial decisions. So this is Tax Increment District 38 for Pioneer Island and Marina. It is being designated as a 20-acre blighted area district and contains approximately 3 parcels in right-of-way. Those 3 parcels are the primary parcel that is privately owned for Pioneer Island and Marina. There is a city-owned parcel, and then there is a state-owned parcel that make up the 3. Obviously, the subject area is the prior Pioneer Inn and Resort. Going through this exercise and looking at tax increment 38 and what we're doing here, the city had to come up with some assumptions and have some discussion with the broader development community. And we're basing a lot of this information off that it's felt that this area could handle approximately $50 million of investment and redevelopment. So that $50 million of potential redevelopment is what this project plan is based off of. Obviously, as the city only does PAYGO TIFs, as development would move forward in this area, that number could change, and each specific development would have to have its own developer's agreement that would actually get into the nitty-gritty about how much development incentive could potentially be paid for, as well as how much public infrastructure could be paid for. Obviously, if full development of the island generated less than $50 million, all of this would be scaled back. So the city's taken a very broad approach to this TID district and looking at, okay, what could potentially happen here? And if it does, what could be funded from those improvements? That way it gives both the city and the developer the most flexibility with this TID. The developer is hoping to use this TID to help generate additional development beyond what they've already considered and kind of using it as a tool to attract even more development into the Pioneer Island redevelopment. So that being said, based on that $50 million of potential generated value, the city could expect approximately $29 million in project plan costs. Those could include up to $5.9 million in PAYGO, $16.3 million of additional infrastructure and improvements for the public, $6.6 million on long-term debt service, and $200,000 for administrative costs. Again, generally, as this is a very broad approach TID, the flexibility is in there, and as development would move forward, those numbers would be scaled down to whatever the actual development is, and those plans move forward. Moving over a little bit to the TID plan, you can kind of flip over that. I said this is a blighted area district TID. It does somewhat overlap with TID District 20. So all base value from 20 would be frozen, and then the new TID would start on top of that. Projections for a total term or total lifespan of the district would be, based on the information we have available today, approximately 26 to 28 years of increment. Some of that begins to be outlined on page 5 of the TID plan. Final land uses for this TID have not been determined at this time. It is anticipated that the marina would continue to be operational and see upgrades. Redevelopment of the island could include a mixture of commercial, office, recreational, multifamily uses. There's a lot of potential development scenarios out there for what could take place on the island. Starting up kind of page 22, we do show those key development assumptions about approximate full development of Valley could take place sometime between now and approximately 2023 or potentially later. To talk a little bit about the consistent with plans, is really what the Plan Commission is here to look at, is those land uses. Obviously, this is a very important redevelopment area for the city, and it's been outlined in a significant amount of plans. So the City of Oshkosh Comprehensive Plan calls this as Center City area, and we would like to see mixed-use development there. The mixed-use development allows high-intensity office, retail, housing, hospitality, public uses. The subject area is also part of the South Shore East sub-area within the Imagine Oshkosh plan. That Imagine Oshkosh plan outlines this as an area in need of redevelopment. Beyond that, being in the sub-district, it's also specifically outlined as an opportunity site within Imagine Oshkosh, which specifically identifies this as a catalyst area within the Sawdust District that we should be focusing redevelopment effort on. That also includes pointing out that the extension of 9th Avenue is a vital component of redevelopment of this area, and the removal of kind of the northern part of Pioneer Island where the Riverwalk would take place. Again, we then also have the South Shore Redevelopment Area Plan that further outlines this area for in need of redevelopment. And then finally, we have the Fox River Corridor Plan, which is the Riverwalk plan that also identifies this site as in need of redevelopment and Riverwalk. That Fox River Corridor plan again indicates that both the island needs redevelopment and 9th Avenue needs to be extended to provide better service for this area. Now talking a little bit more about the project plan, starting on page 8 and 9 are the maps kind of showing the outlined boundary for the TID. Page 14 is our equalized value test, where the state statute outlines that no more than 12% of the equalized value can be within existing TIDs. As you can see, with the inclusion of this TID, we are still significantly below that 12% for equalized value, so we do pass that equalized value test. Beginning on page 15, we start to outline the potential types of project costs that could take place under redevelopment scenarios. That could be property acquisition, conservancy, right-of-way acquisition, easements, relocation costs, demolition, site grading, street improvements, landscaping improvements, sewer and water improvements, the sidewalk and the multi-use trail for the Fox River Corridor plan. Then we do have the development incentives or the cash grants, and then also the administrative costs and professional services. So like I said, it is a very, very broad approach, TID, to try to help get more development into that area. Beginning on page 20, we start to see some of those listed detailed project costs that could potentially be anticipated as redevelopment of this site would occur. Last one really that I will draw your attention to is page 27, where we start to list out if there are any other non-project costs. With this, we can then start to talk about some of those public improvements that would need to be made to the area to serve the island. And then finally, I will point out on page 29 is that overlying taxing jurisdiction that is required by the state. Again, as the city looks at it, if not for the TID, we would not see this value being generated. Considering where this island is, and it has not redeveloped, I think the length of time that it is set vacant and idle really speaks to the fact that it does need some type of assistance to get redevelopment to take place. Todd, Kelly, did I miss anything?
I would add just one thing, Mark. You mentioned that the approach here is slightly different in that most of the recent TIDs the city has created have been very tailored to a very specific development proposal. Mark had mentioned the opportunity zone, so this particular parcel is located within a designated opportunity zone census tract, meaning that there's a particular advantage for investors to deploy capital. So as it goes to the broadness of the plan and the timing, what we're really doing here is responding to the prospective purchaser and developers' request that we create the TID now, so that as they talk to potential investors in the site, they can make the representation that that TID is indeed in place, in the hopes that that will draw even more capital and then ultimately allow for the best and highest use of redevelopment within that site. So again, we're creating this a little bit in advance of when we normally would, but again, we've written it very flexibly, so ultimately whatever is approved by council will fit well within the boundaries of this plan, and it'll be scaled accordingly.
Okay, thank you. Technical questions for the team up here. Kath?
Me? I'm interested primarily in the uses. Our job is land use. And on page 9,
So the land uses that are outlined kind of in their application are just a very general representation. When we undertook the TID plan, because they are hoping to use this as a tool to secure additional development, we tried not to focus on the land uses in their application because we understand they're showing an initial representation. Their hope is to secure additional funding and development, and those change significantly. That's why in the TID plan we actually reference the anticipation here would be commercial, retail, recreational uses.
okay, then I would hope that the plan commission would have perhaps an initial kick at the cat.
So this is a
when they come in with something land use wise.
This is a plan development. It's all zone plan development. So
Okay.
plan commission and council would have to review and approve any development plans, period.
Okay, okay. Then could we go back to the, which describe a little bit better, what is the boundary of TID 38? Is it the initial
So this
rounded thing or the whole?
So the blue line is the outline for TID
Blue lines.
38. The city owns a small parcel here. I'm gonna try to stand up, so bear with me.
Careful.
Got it. The state owns this end of the island, and then the rest of it is the privately held parcel.
Oh,
Except for that northern sliver up there.
Yeah, there's a little
Fox-
north that's a submerged
River.
land lease.
yeah,
Kelly, why don't you point that out?
yeah. We don't want another.
Yeah. Oh, that is owned by the state as well.
Yeah. And, yep, in the very northern part of the island, it is subject to the state land lease because it has been filled in the past. So there are certain requirements that they need to follow with the state for that part also.
Lori,
Good question.
Lori and then Michael.
Okay, so just so I'm clear then, if you're asking plan commission to determine consistency with compatible land uses, but we don't know what the land uses are yet,
Correct. We know that the land uses they've identified would all fit within the comprehensive plan, kind of all those redevelopment plans that we discussed. We just know that they'd like to secure additional further redevelopment. Now, all the types of redevelopment they've discussed, hospitality, potentially new hotel, multifamily, all of those look to be permitted uses. It's just kind of looking at maybe what that final form and function would be, and that'd really be more during the plan development. Now, if they came in with a use that would be substantially different, I guess, than what we would think, we would have to maybe look at amending this plan. But all indications are what we've talked to with office, multifamily, commercial, are all things that the RMU and our redevelopment plans call for this area.
and in their application, there's an assumption about the building of seawall or stabilization. So that does not get factored in because of the, I guess, the project costs are not including that because they're assuming that would be.
That's some of the public improvement stuff that we've outlined in the project plan. Would be the seawall, the riverwalk, those things.
Okay, where's that? I didn't see that.
That is on page. So it's on page 20. It's also outlined a little more in text on page on 17, when we talk about sidewalks, multi-use trail, that would include potential seawall improvements.
And then on page 20, that's not listed there, though.
I think,
It is part of the Riverwalk.
4 million.
Oh, and
Yeah.
the 4 million for
Yep.
the Riverwalk?
Yep.
Okay,
Actually,
gotcha.
8 million, yep, 2 phases of 4 million.
Okay,
Yep.
phase
yeah,
1,
that's the
phase 2.
public
Okay.
Riverwalk.
All right.
Michael?
Yeah, a couple questions. You said this is unusual. TID has been pointed out. Have we done something like this in the past in the city?
Looking at Alan.
The Oshkosh Avenue.
Oshkosh Avenue that went along with the Oshkosh Corporation Global Headquarters. That was to improve the Oshkosh corridor. So it was there was not a specific project in mind, but we knew that there would be additional increment that would be generated. So we did identify multiple public projects that we could use that additional increment to use to pay for those improvements.
Okay. Okay. So the 16.3 million in infrastructure costs, would the process of improving the infrastructure occur after we have full idea of what's coming, or is that something that's going to be used to try to lure development?
There's a couple items with that. With the Riverwalk, the city
Yeah.
does have an agreement with the state and the current owner on when we would need to install the Riverwalk, so we are
Okay.
working with the DNR on that. But as far as the other improvements, we would have to see what type of use would be on the island to determine what type of utilities might be needed, if there's any improvements, needed for the public infrastructure.
Okay, so safe to say, free of the Riverwalk, any of those other improvements wouldn't be funded by this until we had a clear idea of what was happening?
Yeah, we would at least have a better, hopefully by the end of this year, early next year, which direction we're going.
Okay, and last but not least, what would be the process for changing the, modifying the TID agreement if we had to go down that road?
The way we've written this, we've designed it in a way that it would be unlikely you'd have to amend the TID.
Okay.
You know, the agreement's a separate, separate part of the process. If for some reason, something we're not contemplating at all, were to be a part of the agreement, the process for amending the TID is just like the process for creating, so it goes to the Joint Review Board, back through this body and through the council.
We've tried to tailor this in such a way that the TID is broad enough to cover anything we would anticipate. We would then really look to council during their development agreement process to nail down the specifics of what would be taking place.
Great, thank you.
Other technical questions, Mayor Palmieri?
Just one more final, and that's, okay, so we're looking at this as a blight TID.
Correct.
But we really desire mixed use. On our TID policy of the points for attributing the blight TID, just kind of help me understand the points you guys walked through to get to that, if we're actually desiring mixed use.
I guess not knowing if it will be a mixed use or not, we went with blight because that we met the requirements for blight. And it does have, I believe, mixed use is 20 years and then blight goes to 27 years. So it did give us some additional time to capture that increment as well.
So again, going back to the city's TIP policy on the points that get attributed for the blight, can you just walk me through how you guys got to the points? Because it says point total must be greater than 50 points or council waiver is required. So how did you guys get to the 50?
I don't have the spreadsheet with me right now.
Pass it down.
Looking at it, I'm getting to the 50 points. As Mark had mentioned, just there will be quite a bit of redevelopment costs that will be needed, contamination, public infrastructure. So there were some points for that. And then it is in the blight, it will be eliminating blight, and it is redevelopment is needed. It's in quite a few of our plans listed here. And there's no historic preservation as of right now. And then some of these items do go into specific site plans with the quality of development and, meeting the zoning ordinance, and also the environmental. We will be enhancing the streetscape and pedestrian experience where we're adding the Riverwalk for folks to get out there. We do know that there will be some jobs created with the redevelopment. and that we do hope and think that it will fill a gap with underserved markets in the city for whatever use that they may look at doing.
All right, other technical questions? Good discussion, Kathy and then John.
The marina piers, last time I was in there, they're desperately in need of rehab. That would be, I think, valuable increment. Why aren't the marina piers included in the TIF
So
to generate increment?
right now, a lot of the base land value of this property is within the marina and those piers.
It's not within the boundary, but it is assessed
To
as
the-
part of that, that
It's
property.
not a parcel.
It's not a parcel, but it is.
Oh, okay.
That value is,
Okay, so
attributed
that
to
value will be.
Correct.
Absolutely.
And the applicant has indicated that that is one of their first projects they'd like to undertake, is enhancement and kind of fixing up the marina.
Rehab.
Yep.
Complete renovation.
John?
Okay.
I know this is like way ahead of the planning of this, but I'm just looking on page 18, the way you guys have 9th Avenue routed in there. Are you guys gonna close off 6th Avenue then? It looks like you're cutting it right off.
What page, excuse me, what page are you on?
Page 18, where it shows where 9th Avenue comes in. Looks like it cuts it right off, cuts 6th Avenue off right at the corner there.
So the long-term anticipation is that Pioneer Drive would be removed. And that would become parkland along with the Riverwalk. I don't think that would really have any impact on 6th Avenue.
6 does not go.
That does not go all the way through today.
You're talking about Pioneer Drive?
6 is the one that goes all, you take 6th around to 14th Avenue, correct?
Pioneer.
You mean Pioneer Drive
Turns
here?
into Pioneer.
Oh, that's Pioneer Drive, yeah.
Yeah.
But I'm saying where 6th Avenue comes up to Pioneer Drive.
Yeah.
Where 9th Avenue is coming up to.
We'll pull up a broader aerial maybe, see where you're.
Trust me, I grew up over there. I know that area like the back of my hand.
Changes names at Maine.
Fish that whole
By,
area.
by no means has the
I know
exact
it's, like I said,
design
I
of
know it's
9th
early.
been figured out.
I know it's early. It just looks like when you put 9th Avenue in, it looks like you're cutting off everything that goes along the river there where 6th Avenue.
Yeah, so all of that is Pioneer Drive.
Yeah.
That is anticipated to be removed.
That is right there.
Correct.
Okay.
And 9th would be the main thoroughfare that serves this area.
Yeah, that actually makes.
Yeah, everything basically, Pioneer Drive east of Main Street would be removed to approximately where the new 9th Avenue comes
So
in.
that would end up becoming like almost like park space along.
We're
the
looking at
river.
like potentially a linear park along with the Riverwalk.
That's always a good thing.
Or space to fish.
And the city of RDA owns most of the property in that area.
All right, any other technical questions? One of our finer discussions. Go ahead, Justin.
Yeah, exactly.
It states that the 29 million is needed because the development has not occurred in the last 15 years. That's what's in the lighted commentary section. I had chatted with the city manager maybe 6 years ago, and he had indicated that there's really not a whole lot the city could do there because it was private property, and so maybe some steps have been taken. But is there a list anywhere of the efforts to redevelop that property over the last 15 years? It's not, nothing's listed in here. It's just maybe taken for granted that, oh, it's blighted because the development hasn't occurred in 15 years, but maybe no effort has been put in.
So it's been privately held.
Yeah.
And they have not been able to make development work.
The city had been in close communication, at least since the local developer, Art Dumke, acquired an option for it. Meeting with him at least once a quarter, if not more, trying to work on a development. And he's had that option for 5 years, close to 5 years now. Before that, it was privately held by decades. So at that point, the city was still making effort to work with Decades, but has been more engaged since Mr. Dumke has had the option and look forward to redevelop it.
So in general, there's no like detailed report that shows these efforts that led to the determination that development is not possible without $29 million of assistance on 20 acres of prime waterfront real estate in the city. I mean,
it's not 29 million in incentives. Right now, it's outlined at potentially about 5.9 could be incentives.
Sure, and the rest is the road and whatnot.
The city customarily, depending on the nature of the project, has us review the proposed development project's cash flows, looking at the internal rate of return or the cash-on-cash return as appropriate. I don't want to speak for the staff, but my assumption would be at the point that the actual project comes in with the application and it's ready to be transformed into a development agreement, that exercise will be undertaken, then ultimately, that's what we do in order to make the determination that but for the provision of whatever the TIF assistance is, at that point is necessary to allow the project to proceed. Again, remember, this is kind of an umbrella, a kitchen sink of everything that could be needed in order to facilitate full development of this property. What actually happens is yet to be determined, and it's scalable, meaning that, what we'll be able to put into it's going to be a function of what's built, along with the necessity and a demonstration that it's needed.
Yeah, so these numbers are.
Alan might have a response to Justin.
And maybe I could point out one thing, that the city is in a four-party agreement regarding the development of that property with the DNR, the Bureau of Land Commissioners, the current owner, and the city. And the city is obligated to build the Riverwalk in conjunction with the redevelopment of this property. So that's why the Riverwalk is first and foremost on the list. And that is a big ticket item that the city has to deal with because we're contractually obligated to build it. And the other pieces are like 9th Avenue. That's something that's always been in the plan since I got here regarding extending 9th Avenue, since it connects out to the interstate and making that the better access point for Pioneer. The rest of the development really drives the other project costs for the development incentives of the utilities. That's really going to be specific to the development. But those two big things have been out there for a long time, and the city has just been waiting for the time when we're going to have to actually pull the trigger and do those projects.
Why include things like 9th Avenue Road and the Riverwalk into a TIF district versus just doing them? Like, were the other parts of the Riverwalk all done through TIFs?
It's customary to look at those things that can help enhance the TID to bring that value in and help the infrastructure cost that the city has. It's customarily done within the TIDs, and I know Alan can probably speak to that even further than I can.
I can just clarify the context of that is because you're pulling money from Fox Valley Tech, from the school district, and from Winnebago County for this versus if we did those projects separate like the other parts of Riverwalk or just other general road expansion or.
So public infrastructure improvements like road improvements, Riverwalk, public utilities that help service the development is part of what TIF districts are designed to do to help fund those improvement costs.
And just to follow up on that, I would say every section of the Riverwalk in the downtown used TIF funds for the local match when we did get grant funds. The only time I don't think we've used TIF funds is out at Lakeshore. That was something that we've been able to use land proceeds, a donation, and the grant funds from DNR. The rest of them are TIF 15, 17, 20, and 21 have funded the Riverwalk.
Sure. Okay. Question about what developer incentives means. So the bulk of the things you were talking about, 9th Avenue, the Riverwalk, those are pretty clear, but then there's the generalized $4.27 million of developer incentives.
Yep, so those are PAYGO TIF assistance that council, when they do the developer agreement, can choose to do PAYGO TIF assistance.
It's a cash contribution to a private development.
And those are usually just like a grant then, or?
The statute requires a development agreement to be entered into, which will specify the terms and conditions. So there's representations that have to be made by the developer as to what they're constructing, minimum values, et cetera, whatever the city chooses to place in that agreement. So it's contingent on meeting whatever the developer's contractual obligations are.
Last one that I have is, so I was looking at you mentioned the land use, and I was reviewing the comprehensive plan, and there's some of the key goals, I guess, that are at the end, and that's where it lists what body is supposed to take responsibility for various goals. And in there, it states that the city will work to promote environmentally sensitive and responsible utilization of land, incorporating permanent open space and natural resources. It sounds like there's some good park space here. It also lists the Plan Commission as the lead agency. And then it further states the Plan Commission is the lead agency on protecting and preserving wetlands, shorelands, and other environmentally sensitive areas. When I looked through this whole document, the only reference to any sort of environmental, natural anything was, there was a listing of the potential to purchase land for conservation purposes. And I guess I was just curious if the city's gonna be dedicating, almost $5 million to a developer for a project on what would arguably be one of the more key natural environment areas of the urban city, what protections or what's the vision that the developer has for this space, which is one of our more valuable environmental regions? It's not listed down here at all.
So as Alan talked about a little bit, there is a four-party agreement with the state that's dictating a lot of what can actually take place on the island. So that's why we didn't touch on it specifically in here, because there's another overriding 2 state agencies that are involved within that Riverwalk. But when we look at the public improvement, the public side of things, there's 2 areas on this plan that specifically we're looking at with public green space and public access. The first is the corridor plan does call for some trailhead improvements to be made along the southern portion here. And that tip of the island owned by the state, we're looking at some green space parkland improvements to this area. So that's the conservation side of what we're looking at, is preserving that state-owned parcel, turning it into a nice recreational green space area for potential people using the Riverwalk, have a place to go out, nice view out to the river.
So that stays public land?
Correct. That stays public land.
And if you look at this, the computer right behind you, that hatched area all around the island, that's an easement for the Riverwalk that is already in place right now, and that's where the Riverwalk would be created.
But yeah, that tip out is state-owned property and will stay state-owned property for green space and public use.
It's been very important for us to get that trail out, the Riverwalk out to that point.
John and then the mayor.
I did notice in here that there was a repayment of utility cost. Is the plan that the utility, storm, sanitary and water would pay for the infrastructure improvements as they normally would for a street reconstruction or what have you, and then those funds would actually be repaid?
That was the idea.
Okay.
They would have to pay for some upfront costs, and then just to repay them over time, repay the utilities.
I appreciate those being in there, being on the stormwater utility, that it does alter our plans quite a bit with Oshkosh Corp. In Oshkosh Avenue TIFs, what we can do and not being able to have that money, and I know that wasn't included in those TIFs, I believe, but to see that in here, it's a good step forward. I commend you on that, so thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. First of all, I want to say I know how many years we've been waiting to see some activity on this, so this is really important. Second of all, the compressed time frame because of the opportunity zone, I think, makes this vote rather important. The third question is, I'm wondering, since we don't quite have a fully developed plan for the land uses for this body's consideration, was there thought given to, I guess, maybe bifurcating the actual boundaries between the island and the marina? Or is that less than desirable in terms of the whole valuation expectation? In other words, since it seems like there's more specific knowns for what's expected for the southern
Yeah, the
section
marina
of
side,
that,
yeah.
and not so much with the northern piece, the island piece, what does that do to things if the TID boundaries are what's more known versus not, and then adding that in later when that is it a evaluation? Is that what it is?
I think it's the, Mr. Dumke's desire to be able to represent to investors that there's a tax increment district in place
On the island.
on the island, right?
Okay.
So by excluding that, we aren't accommodating that request.
Okay, any other technical questions? Go ahead, Lindsay.
I noticed on page 11 of the application, so for environmental remediation, is that covered somewhere else? It's not listed that there's a specific amount for that?
Of the application or of the TID?
On the
The back portion.
Yeah, towards the back of the project plan. I guess it's listed as page 11.
I would look a little bit, so, and the applicant's here, so we can ask some specific questions, how they've came up with those numbers as well.
Is the question, where is it in the project plan?
Yeah, is that
It would
covered
be
somewhere
a
else?
part of the development incentive.
Okay.
Anything else, Lindsay? Okay. Other technical questions?
One last one.
Go ahead.
The demolition, 210,000 on that page. Wasn't the demolition already done?
I believe most of it was done earlier this year. Or I should say not most of it, the final portion of it was done earlier this year.
So this would include project costs of the demolition, even though it's already been done, would still be considered, even
this-
though,
No, their application is a little different than the actual TID plan funding.
okay.
And they still need to do additional demolition is what I remember
is.
as well.
Okay.
All right, if
But the
there's no other
building-
technical questions, let us open it up to the public for comment and questions. Anyone here from the public to speak to this item today? Come on up, sir. Thank you for your patience.
My name is Tim Hess. I live at 2645 Templeton Place. I guess I would represent part of the associates of Dumke and Associates. I don't have anything specific, but just want to open it up to, I'm here to address any questions that you guys may have.
Questions for the gentleman? Go ahead, Justin.
Sure. I'm hoping maybe that you could articulate your vision related to the natural environment of that plot, given that it's quite extensive shoreline frontage and quite valuable for our natural environment.
Well, I mean, Mr. Dumke, his vision is to try to get as much fishing and outdoor activity as possible. I think we presented at the Common Council several weeks ago, and I think we had an image of kind of the shoreline stuff on the northern side. We had some recreational condos. Admittedly, that was to try to get some fishing going on there, but we also have now come to appreciate that there is, what is it, not a floodplain, but a floodway.
Floodway.
So a lot of our stuff that we had on the northern section of this, we have to rethink. But I can say that Mr. Dumke is trying to do all that he can to try to get people, one, to come to the marina and enjoy the water per se, but also just having this river walk and the easement around the entirety of this island. It puts it such that the entire public is going to be able to access the entirety of the exterior of that island. And to me, that's about as good as we can get in terms of trying to get people down and enjoy what you rightfully designate as one of our most pertinent pieces of land here in Oshkosh.
Thank you.
Questions? Go ahead, Mayor.
Mr. Hess, did you say you're part of Dumke and Associates? Are you a principal?
I am not, no. I'm an associate. I'm working for him. I'm not an owner at all.
Okay, okay.
No.
Just wanted to clarify.
Yep.
I didn't see your name on the
Yeah,
list.
yeah, no.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions for the petitioner? Thank you, sir. Anyone else here to speak to this item today? Then we will close public comment and seek a motion.
Motion to adopt the findings, recommendations as stated in the staff report.
Second.
All right, discussion. Go ahead, Kathy.
We've all said it in different words, but this is vitally important. And if there is one TIF district in this whole city that the city would be behind, this would be it. Whatever we can do to make this project work.
I would just add comment to the commissioners that this was very thoughtful and fruitful and thorough discussion, which I think is needed when you do this. And I think it makes it easier for the elected people to know that people have asked some really good, deep questions. So, other thoughts? Let's call the roll.
Hintz,
Aye.
Kiefer,
Aye.
Palmieri,
Aye.
Harry,
Aye.
Mitchell,
Aye.
Crop,
Aye.
Erickson, Ford,
Aye.
Wojtek.
Aye.
Motion carried 9-0.
Do you have anything else for us, Limpy? I mean, sir?
I do not.
All right. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? All right, we're done.
If anyone wants to hear all the